stiff and straight, grows up, and it's sort of like a ladder as the leaves go off the sides, and it actually is going to make a ladder for the bean, which is going to grow below it. It's going to be there to support the younger sister. So the beans start by putting out a pair of little heart-shaped leaves, and then they'll put out another set of little heart-shaped leaves. And then all of a sudden, this sister, this middle sister, who can be kind of contrary, decides that she's going to stop making those leaves and sends out a nice long green little string. And that string starts poking toward the sky and circling until it finds that cornstalk that's waiting, and then it climbs the cornstalk. So the cornstalk is there to give it support. And meanwhile, once that's going on, the squash that is planted at the base, which is a very late starter, starts spreading over the ground. It has great big leaves, and those leaves actually shelter the ground. It keeps moisture in. When it rains, it keeps all that water in the soil, and it keeps the weeds out, which is very happy for a farmer or a gardener. The native lore speaks of this gardening style as the three sisters. You've got the corn, the bean, and the squash. And there are a lot of stories as to how this came to be, and almost every single indigenous people has this story in one form or another, which is kind of a nice gift to us. And all of these stories share the understanding of the sisters' spiritual gifts that actually brought agriculture to this nation, brought food. So together, the corn, the beans, and the squash, they feed the people, they feed the land, and they feed our imaginations, telling us how we might live by supporting each other. So I planted seeds in pots. I have a whole bunch of them over here in little tiny pots, and you can see this one, the bean seed. You can see the little heart-shaped leaves. The corn is coming up. The squash is still sleeping. It hasn't come up yet. So I'm going to send these home with anyone who wants to take one. And what you'll do when you get it at home, you put it into another pot, because it does have holes in the bottom so it can drain. You put it into another pot, put it on a sunny windowsill, and hold on to it until Mother's Day. And Mother's Day, it should be warm enough to plant outside. You can just plant the whole thing in the ground in the little pot, and you'll have your own set of three sisters growing. So remember, if you have a sister or if you don't have a sister, if you have a best friend, if you have a brother, be there as their support network and help nurture.
Thank you, Kate. Well, I learned something. So now, children and youth, it's time for you to go to religious exploration. We're going to sing you out of the sanctuary, and you'll meet your group leaders in the foyer or in Sandberg Hall. Look for the adults holding a sign with your grade to find your group. And parents, if you're visiting today, please escort your children to their class so you can meet the group leaders and find out when to pick them up and to get your corn, your three-sister pot. Okay, let's sing our children out. In the center of our service and in the center of our lives, let us pause to honor the silences of the world. Let us open our hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain and the soft, gentle coming of love. Before we enter our moment of silence, I would like to share a poem by Mary Oliver called Sleeping in the Forest. Sleeping in the forest, I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, arranged her dark skirts, her pockets full of lichens and seeds. I never slept as before, a stone on the riverbed, nothing between me and the white fire of the stars but my thoughts. and they floated light as moths among the branches of the perfect trees. All night I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects and the birds who do their work in darkness. All night I rose and fell as if in water, grappling with a luminous doom. By morning, I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better. Let us share a moment of silence. And now it is time for acknowledging our joys and sorrows with a candle lighting ritual. If you're in the sanctuary, please feel free to come forward and light a candle. And if you're online, please write in the chat box any joy or sorrow that you'd like to share with the community. We will light 2 candles for you, those of you at home, one for joy and one for sorrow. and we light one last candle for the joys and sorrows left unspoken in our hearts. And if you have shared a joy, know that we rejoice with you. If you have shared a sorrow, know that you are held in love and care by this community.
So beautiful. As we celebrate Earth Day this week, I want to share some thoughts on a book by a fellow UU, Mary Pipher. It's called The Green Boat: Reviving Ourselves in Our Capsized Culture. This book has been very helpful to me as I try to make sense of what's happening with the climate and what that means for life on Earth. The book is divided into 5 sections, following the emotional arc Mary Pipher wants us to take as we figure out how to joyfully, constructively live in this time. The sections are trauma, denial, awareness to action, resilient coping, and the transcendent response. In the first part of the book, she names the grief, frustration, and fear that she feels, many of us feel, as we see the urgent climate situation and the world's inadequate response. She talks about how we're individuals, busy, overwhelmed, tired individuals, struggling to deal with complex, systemic problems. Pfeiffer's a therapist, so she tells us that acknowledging the difficult emotions is healthy and important. She says, quote, "This involves waking from our trance of denial, facing our own pain and sorrow, accepting the world as it is, adapting, and living more intentionally." Processing and moving beyond the difficult emotions allows us, Pfeiffer says, quote, "to once again be present and focused, to stay calm and balanced, and to attend to the world around us with great love." She talks about the importance to our health and wellness, to balance our climate concern with enjoying life. She talks about bliss as an antidote to despair, savoring a silvery half moon, azaleas in bloom, cooking with a loved one, playing the banjo, laughing with friends. Pfeiffer began to deal with her anxiety by doing small environmental actions in her community. Quote, "Action has always been my healing tonic," she says. "The main effect of my small actions was to energize and hearten myself, but small actions matter." She says, quote, "When we act individually, we set in motion a turning that can be deeply healing for all of us and the planet." What should we do? Pfeiffer shares many examples of individuals' unique, transcendent responses. She writes, "Transcendent responses can include spiritual growth, art, music, devotion to the greater good, poetry, and bliss. What they have in common is they take us beyond our current capacities into something larger, grander, and more durable. Each of us must find the ways that speak to us and use our gifts." One thing that Pfeiffer found deeply meaningful was joining with others. She tells about her work trying to stop the Keystone XL pipeline from being built across an aquifer and rivers that supply Nebraska's drinking water. She helped build a diverse coalition of farmers, artists, teachers, and refugees, and they did all kinds of creative activities to build awareness and reach politicians. Reading about the joy she found in working with others, I thought of the Environmental Action Committee here at UUCA, which we're members of. This group has had different members and different names over the years, but let me mention a few of the things that have happened as a result of congregation members and staff brainstorming and doing projects together. Accreditation of our campus as a green sanctuary in 2008, reusable coffee cups, plates, and utensils, a rain garden that collects stormwater, edible plants and native plants, insulation and caulking to make the 21 and 23 Edwin houses energy efficient, encouraging congregants to make energy efficient improvements at home, LED bulbs in the sanctuary and Sandbrook Hall, composting, hosting book studies, an ethical eating class, a carbon footprint reduction group, the Climate Action Fair last fall, helping with community tree plantings and river cleanups, and going solar, which so many of you contributed to. For those who don't know, we have 105 solar panels on the roof. Similar to what Mary Pfeiffer describes, I found that being involved with the action group has helped me channel my anxiety into positive action, and it's been wonderful to talk with others about our concern for what's happening and ideas we can try at home and how we can make an impact as a congregation. And the cool thing is, we're part of a bigger movement. Mary Pipher quotes the statistic that at the time she was writing, and that was a decade ago, there were over 2 million groups in the world working for environmental change, social and economic justice, and indigenous peoples' rights. That gives me great hope that ultimately the world is trending in the right direction. So during the time I was reading this book, everything I did seemed to remind me of a passage from it. It felt very relevant to today's struggles. And although taking time to read the book and go to meetings has made me busier, it has also made me feel more whole. The Environmental Action Committee is sponsoring an upcoming book study of The Green Boat starting May 7th. You can find details in the upcoming e-news. I invite you to join us or come to our monthly meetings, chaired by Wink, Zachritz, and Ed Presteman, as we strive together for resilient coping and transcendent response.
Thank you, Sunita. So I'm going to share a little wisdom from Wendell Berry this morning. Most of you know Wendell Berry, the poet laureate in Kentucky, and he's lived off the land on a family farm for 40 years. He writes everything with a pencil. He does not own a computer. If Wendell Berry was a member of this church, he would not be here today. He says that he is a bad weather churchgoer, which means when the weather is good, and sometimes when it's just even only tolerable, he's drawn to the woods on the local hillsides or the streams. He says, I experience a lovely freedom from expectations, other people's and my own. I go free from the tasks and intentions of my work days, and so my mind becomes hospitable to unintended thoughts, to what I am very willing to call inspiration. The poems, he has a book this thick of Sabbath poems that he wrote on these Sundays afternoons that he played hooky from church. He says, the poems come incidentally, or they do not come at all. If the muse leaves me alone, I leave her alone. To be quiet, even wordless, in a good place is a better gift than poetry. And he talks about nature. He said, nature, of course, includes damage as a part of her wholeness, but nature's damage is always followed by healings, though not necessarily on a human schedule or in our human time. The creative destruction of industrialism, he writes, by contrast, implies no repayment of what we have taken, no healing, but is in effect a repudiation of our membership in the land community. The fundamental conflict of our time is that between the creaturely life of nature's world and the increasingly mechanical life of modern humans. Herein lies our conflict. He doesn't own a computer, they've never had a television, he almost never sees a movie, because he believes that isolation is necessary because it keeps his own language, his language, available to him in a way that wouldn't be possible if he was full of the public information all the time. To make yourself a passive receptacle for information, he writes, or whatever anybody wants to pour into you, is a bad idea. To be informed used to mean a meaningful experience. It meant to be formed from within. But information now is just a bunch of disconnected data or information, and such may be worthless and perhaps harmful. He quotes in one of his poems from T.S. Eliot, the endless cycle of idea and action, endless invention and endless experience brings knowledge of motion, but not of stillness. He has a wonderful essay that I've read several times, and every time I read it, I'm still awestruck. It's called An Entrance into the Woods. Wendell Berry used to be a professor of English in the university in Lexington, Kentucky. And he takes a sunny afternoon, driving back from Lexington. He decides that he's going to spend some time in the woods, in a wilderness that he's never experienced before. He drives from Lexington on the freeway down to the watershed of the Red River in Daniel Boone National Park. It's about 5 p.m. by the time he gets there and enters the woods and begins his entrance along the Red River Gorge. And he notices the steady, sleepy trilling of insects and the occasional cry of a pileated woodpecker. The air is still, and so along with his footsteps, these are the only sounds. He makes his way to the sound of the trickling and splashing sounds of water from small streams, noting the restfulness and peace these sounds instill. Wendell Berry's very prolific, and his words and his essays are as much poetry as his poems are poetry, and many of them are essays. I think that I find myself every time I read this walking with him because his images are so incredibly eloquent and reverent. I hope that you'll read it. But when as he walks along and he's chronicling all the beautiful things he sees, he sets up a camp along the stream, a little primitive camp, and then he sits down at the edge, and suddenly he feels a sense of melancholy. He's not surprised because it's happened to him before. This particular place, the narrow hollows of the Red River Gorge, have a haunting feeling at night. Ancient tribesmen who used to inhabit the rock houses of the cliffs, the white hunters who came from the mountains, the farmers who each lived with the isolation of these nearly inaccessible valleys to crop the narrow bottoms and ridges and pasture their cattle and hogs in the woods. This wilderness place, he said he feels, bears the burden of human history. He admits that that might be the sense of the past was what causing his melancholy, but he knows it's more than that. And this is the wisdom I hope you'll remember from this sermon. He writes this: "One reason for the melancholy is that though I am here in my body and my nerves, though I am here in my body, my mind and my nerves are not yet altogether here. We seem to grant to our high-speed roads and airlines the rather thoughtless assumption that people can change places as rapidly as their bodies can be transported. Once off the freeway, my pace gradually slowed and the roads became progressively more primitive, from 70 miles an hour to a walk. And now here at my campsite, I have stopped altogether. My mind is still keyed to 70 miles an hour. And having come here so fast, it is still busy with work I am usually doing. Having come here by freeway, my mind is not so fully here as it would have been if I had come by the crookeder, slower state roads. It is incalculably farther away than it would have been if I had come all the way on foot, as my early predecessors came. When the Indians and the first white hunters entered this country, they were all together here as soon as they arrived, for they had experienced everything fully between here and where they started. The transitions were gradual. So Berry says that our senses are developed to function at foot speeds, and to transition from foot travel to motor travel in the terms of evolutionary time has been abrupt. The faster one goes, the more strain there is on the senses, and the more they fail to take in, and the more confusion they must tolerate or gloss over. The longer it takes to bring the mind to a stop in the presence of everything. So that really struck me. When we fly across the country in 5 hours, we drive, I like to drive 80 miles an hour, which makes matters worse, right? This unease we feel, this disconnection that we have with our world is part of this problem. So it's this awe that he's speaking about that makes us want to care for our earth and to be connected to it. So it makes us also humble. So there's a book called The Extended Mind, The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain. And they talk about this kind of awe. Let me read you this quote. "The functional account of awe biologists and psychologists' attempt at explaining why we feel this emotion proposes that it spurs humans to put aside their individual interests in the service of a collective project. Members of the species who were inclined to feel awe, the story goes, were better able to band together or to accomplish tasks, essential tasks. By extending ordinary thinking with awe at nature's immensity, humankind may have ensured its own survival. A reminder to us, perhaps, to look away from our small screens long enough to confront the dangers that threaten our kind and our planet today. And so, this book also refers to the occasions of awe that were once available to our forebears, are the same ones that move us now. The mountains, the oceans, the trees, the skies, just watching spring happen. And the view from the natural world from outer space, as glimpsed by astronauts, is overwhelming. Scientists have given it a name. They call it the overview effect. Alan Shepard, who walked on the moon in 1971, has said, if somebody had said before the flight, are you going to get carried away looking at the Earth from the moon? I would have said, no way. But yet, when I first looked back at the Earth standing on the moon, I cried. This is the same awe that Wendell Berry is trying to convey to us. He is trying to teach us that we are so distracted by the bothers and busyness of our lives and our work and our society to notice that the world is dying. Activist Rachel Taylor wrote, the real secret of the apocalypse is not that it comes with a bang or that it comes with a whimper, but that it comes while you're doing other things. The secret is that you don't get a break to build a better world. You have to do it all the while you're surviving in this one, she says. You have to do it like it's a secret obsession, like a shameful hobby. You have to do it because it's exciting and dangerous and subversive and necessary. You have to share it with other kinksters like yourself because you're not alone in this wanting, this desire. But you still have to do the dishes. I love that. So Wendell Berry said in an interview, if your love of country doesn't move you to do something to take care of it, no matter how small or unnewsworthy, then I don't think you have any protection against the despair of what's going on. If a man loves his soul, he will save it. And I think the test, Wendell Berry says, is whether you're willing to do the small things that need to be done and can be done. This is not going to cure a big despair for the fate of the world. It's only a part of the cure. And if you're going to indulge that big despair, you're up the creek without a paddle. He spoke with Thomas Merton, who was really fascinated by the Shakers. And Berry said to him, if they were so certain that the world was going to end at any minute, how come they built the best building in Kentucky? And Merton said, you don't understand. If you know the world could end at any minute, you know there's no need to be in a hurry. You take your time and you do your best work that you possibly can. And Berry said that was important to him. Made me think of what Martin Luther once said. Even if I knew tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree. So Wendell Berry says, to appreciate the numinous aspect of the universe, we need to understand that we ourselves activate one of the deepest dimensions of the universe. We can recognize in ourselves our special intellectual, emotional, and imaginative capacities. The human is neither an addendum nor an intrusion upon the universe. We are quintessentially integral with the universe. In ourselves, the universe is revealed to itself, and as we are revealed to the universe. So here's the message. Take time to go out into the wilderness. Take time to reconnect with the natural world. When we stop long enough to realize that we are integral, not intrusions, we are integral to this world and not separate, then we will live differently, we will change. Robin Kimmerer wrote in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, The very facts of the world are a poem. Light is turned to sugar, salamanders find their way to ancestral ponds following magnetic lines radiating from the earth. The saliva of grazing buffalo caused the grass to grow taller. Tobacco seeds germinate when they smell smoke, and microbes in industrial waste can destroy mercury. Aren't these all stories that we should know? When my son studied biology at Clemson University, he came home so excited one day. Mom, guess what? There's a flower seed that can only be germinated if it has been eaten, digested, and pooped out by a cow. These are stories we should know, right? Wow. Kimmerer says it is the poem of reciprocity, give and take, that animates the world. My breath is your breath. Your breath is mine. Only when people understand this symbiotic relationship that sustains them can they become people of the corn, capable of gratitude and reciprocity. And this is the transcendent response that Sunita spoke of, processing and moving beyond the difficult emotions that allow us, Pfeiffer says, to once again be present and focused, to stay calm and balanced, and to attend to the world around us with great love. So may it be. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
And now, the work of the congregation. At this time, we'd like to invite visitors to stand and introduce themselves. This is not an empty request. This is so that we can get to know you better and approach you and talk to you in the coffee hour, which will come next. So it'd be great if you'd be willing to do that. And we should have some folks going around with microphones so you can actually be recorded for posterity. Nope. Okay. Just yell.
Hi, my name's Mary Lundquist. I'm visiting my mother-in-law, Sherry Lundquist. This is Felix, and I have 2 other friends here, and we're visiting for the month, and happy to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks.
No.
We'll try another. Testing, testing. Is that better?
Yeah, that one works.
Okay, so my name is Hunt Koiker. I am the brother of Linda Koiker. I live in San Diego, and I'm coming to visit my sister for about 2 weeks.
Welcome.
This is a lovely sanctuary, and a beautiful service.
Anyone else?
Anyone else?
I think you're going to just have to
Holler it out.
holler out.
My name is Patty Manalo, and I am here with my daughter Emily today, my two grandsons. They invited me. I moved here from Pittsburgh a year ago, and I feel like I'm just where I need to be today.
Welcome.
Thank you.
My name is Spencer Amesbury. Down here with my wife. We're from Cape Ann, Massachusetts. Came down to look at the rhododendrons.
Great. Anybody else?
I said something a few weeks ago about that wall hanging which I made, but the lady and her husband who commissioned it, whose fault it is, are here today, and it's Julie and Sheldon, and I cannot pronounce it.
All Schultz.
Yes. So that nice lady there is, it's her fault.
All right, anybody else? I see little tags out there, but that's okay. Anyway, please join us next for coffee in Sandberg Hall. So at this time, and before I do, I'd like to just say something. Clyde Harden's going to give us an update on the voting process for the new minister, but I would just like to say, Clyde, you do a lot of great stuff around this place. And whatever crazy committee is out there, Clyde might show up to be on it.
I'm going to embarrass myself enough without that wink. Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's almost here. Just 1 week away. Candidating week. This is the week, just chock full of activities that give us all the opportunity to finally meet and interact with our candidate for lead minister, the Reverend Audette Fulbright Fulson. I just want to relay some information about this candidating week that we've all been hearing about. First, you should know that UU Asheville's ministerial search and selection process is the same process that's used throughout our denomination. That process operates on essentially the same schedule for all churches in search, all in coordination and consultation with the UUA. So most of you are familiar with this since you've lived it over the past year. But this process culminates, everyone hopes, with each church in search having exactly one final candidate for their own candidating week. Well, UU Asheville has finally gotten to that point, and in fine form, I must say. Reverend Audette Fulson is our one candidate, and she will be with us for 8 days from April 23rd to April 30th next week. On the last day, April 30th, we will decide whether or not to call Reverend Fulson to our pulpit. If for some reason we decide not to call her, we must get back on that UUA schedule, which means we go through another interim year with a different interim minister and hope to call a different lead minister in the spring of 2024. It's important to understand that UU Asheville's members, not the search committee, not the interim minister, not the staff, not the board, that either approves of this candidate or decides for some reason she's not right for us. We decide this by interacting with Reverend Audette during candidating week and then voting on whether or not to call her at the end of that week. She will preach in our pulpit on both Sundays, the 23rd and the 30th, and she will be available to us all in the congregation at certain scheduled times in between. So now a few words about the activities of Candidating Week and about the vote on Sunday the 30th. Our search committee, along with the transition team and UU Asheville staff and volunteers, have been working their hind ends off organizing and supporting a very full week of activities, many with free food. The full schedule can be found in multiple places. It's on our website's regular church calendar and is also published in both the regular Wednesday e-news and the special Candidating Week email missives that come out on Tuesdays. But just to whet your appetite, so to speak, I'll mention some events. A luncheon and reception next Sunday after the first service featuring Reverend Audette. A Zoom session on Monday for our virtual community, a social justice-oriented interactive meeting with Reverend Audette on Tuesday evening, and on the lighter side, a dinner and game night on Wednesday evening, and a family fun night on Friday evening. Also next week, please watch for and respond to an RSVP link, which will allow members to choose which events they plan to attend. We need a head count for all that free food. All this leads up to the final Sunday, the 30th, with Reverend Audette in the pulpit, a luncheon after the service, and most important, a congregational meeting at 2 p.m. with the sole purpose of voting to call Reverend Audette to UU Asheville. I can't overemphasize the importance of that vote to call or not call. Our members are calling the minister. We want to help us navigate our way into what we believe is UU Asheville's very bright future. The right minister can make that happen, and conversely, the wrong minister can make that hard. For that reason, our bylaws follow UUA recommendations and require a 90% or better majority to call a lead minister. So please, participate in Candidating Week as much as you can, and if you are a member, vote at that congregational meeting or submit a proxy vote in advance. Childcare, I'm told, will be provided for that meeting. It's good. Information on proxy voting will be forthcoming, but I think we'd much rather see you in person on the 30th for the Vote for Our Future, where we can all celebrate this wonderful, wonderful accomplishment together. Thank you.
Just as a reminder, notice how much taller Clyde is than I am. Let's see. Just a reminder that our announcements run as slides at the beginning of the service. And if you miss them, refer to Wednesday's weekly e-news, as everything is described there. A special announcement, there will be an 8th principal panel discussion and question and answer session today at 12:30 in the sanctuary, and childcare will be provided. These are pretty interesting things. We're looking at adopting the 8th principle, and this is an option, an opportunity to ask questions, to discuss, to just learn more about it. So if you have any questions about it, it's a good session to attend. Our community plate recipient this month is Carolina Abortion Fund. You can donate by check, put community plate in the memo line. You can also donate online. Today's offering will now be collected and gratefully received. If this is your first time here and you didn't stand up, I mean, that's okay, but I'm just kidding. Please let the collection plate pass you by. This service is offered as our gift to you, and your presence is your gift to us. And now, Chris Rosser.
Upon the planet, so Lord of all that you could see, just a little bit like me, walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps. That's your part. Walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps. Hey, Mr. Dinosaur, you really couldn't ask for more. You were God's favorite creature, but you didn't have a future. Walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps. Hey, mighty brontosaurus, don't you have a lesson for us? Thought your rule would always last. There were no lessons in your past. You were built 3 stories high. They say you would not hurt a fly. If we explode the atom bomb, would they say that we were dumb? Walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps. They say the meek shall inherit the earth. They say the meek shall inherit the earth. Walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps, walking in your footsteps.
Chris Rosser, you are awesome. So, for your gifts of time, talent, presence, and treasure, we thank you. So I go back to Gretchen Haley's words that we started this service with. Forget your stories of separation from the earth, from life, from your breath, and from all others breathing here and everywhere. Remember yourselves indivisible and indispensable, and remember that we need all of us to make a new day, to a new creation, and to begin again. May it be so. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing our closing song, Longtime Son.
Just to see
Join us for coffee hour, and thanks for being here this morning.
Hope it goes well next week.